We now come to the statement. Chief Secretary to the Treasury.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I would like to make a statement to the House on two separate but related matters. The first is regarding communication with the public in the lead-up to the budget. I understand that this is a topic which has held much interest and speculation over the weekend, and I would like to take this opportunity to give a formal statement on the government's position to the House. Second, Mr. Speaker, the government has also today received the results of the OBR's investigation into the early release of the economic and fiscal outlook at the budget last week. I know the House will be very concerned to know the findings of that report, and so I will turn to that in a moment. On the first point, Mr. Speaker, the Chancellor has been consistent and upfront with the public about her considerations in the lead-up to the budget last week. First, the Chancellor was clear on her priorities at the budget, which was to cut NHS waiting lists, to cut the cost of living, and to cut our debt and borrowing. The budget that she delivered last week delivered on those priorities. Secondly, the Chancellor was clear on November the 4th that a lower productivity forecast would mean lower tax receipts. The OBR confirmed at the budget that tax receipts are £16 billion lower as a result of their reduced productivity forecast. Third, the Chancellor was clear on November the 4th that she intended to build more headroom. She has done that, with the headroom against the stability rule at £21.7 billion. Fourth, the Chancellor was clear in the summer that the policy decisions we took on welfare would need to be paid for at the budget, and the budget document shows those decisions cost £6.9 billion in 29-30. And finally, the OBR have now confirmed that the Chancellor knew on the 4th of November that she only had £4.2 billion of headroom against the fiscal rules, meaning that once the cost of those policy decisions was accounted for, there would be a deficit of £2.7 billion against the stability rule. Mr. Speaker, the combined effect of this information is that on November the 4th, the Chancellor knew that the government would be in a deficit against the stability rule before any of this government's priorities of the budget had been delivered or any additional headroom built. In light of this information, and in the knowledge of the OBR's productivity downgrade, the Chancellor knew on November the 4th that challenging decisions would be required on tax and spend. The subsequent decision to freeze personal tax thresholds for a further 3 years shows that this was correct. Mr. Speaker, the Chancellor took the step of delivering a speech before the budget precisely so that she could be upfront about the circumstances she was facing and the decisions that she would need to take. The Chancellor has been honest and consistent with the public in everything she has said. Now, Mr. Speaker, let me turn to my second topic. Last Wednesday, before the Chancellor had begun to give her budget speech, the Office of Budget Responsibility published their entire economic and fiscal outlook online. Let me be clear, Mr. Speaker. This is a very serious breach of highly sensitive information. It is a fundamental breach of the OBR's responsibility. It is a discourtesy to this House, and it should never have happened. The OBR rightly took full responsibility and issued an apology to the Chancellor later that day. They have now conducted an investigation into how the report was published prematurely, and they sent their report, including their findings, to the Treasury and the Treasury Select Committee today at 12:30. The report states, and I quote, "We are in no doubt that the failure to protect information prior to publication has inflicted heavy damage on the OBR's reputation. It is the worst failure in the 15-year history of the OBR." It adds that the responsibility for the circumstances in which this vulnerability occurred and was then exposed rests over the years with the leadership of the OBR. The report notes that this has inflicted heavy damage on the OBR's reputation and caused significant disruption on budget day to the Chancellor's disadvantage. I can confirm to the House that the report goes on to make clear that this is a significant and long-standing issue that has allowed external users to gain early access to the OBR's publication, which contains full details of their forecasts and the Chancellor's budget. Mr. Speaker, in the days since the budget, there has been speculation about what kind of error led to the economic and fiscal outlook being published early. The report today confirms that the cause was not, and I quote, simply a matter of pressing the publication button on a locally managed website too early. The report concludes that the cause of the OBR's error were systemic issues, and that the investigation has made clear that the problem exposed last week was not a new one. Indeed, I can confirm to the House that the report reveals that the OBR's EFO in March was accessed before the Chancellor delivered the spring statement to the House. This underlines just how serious a situation this is. Let me underline that as a government, we take this seriously to make sure the OBR never allows this to happen again. The report notes that common and fairly basic protections to prevent early access, including passwords and random character URLs, were not used. It further notes 2 configuration errors, which were not understood by the OBR's online publishing function, prevented the safeguards within their online publishing software from being effective. Mr. Speaker, I'm also very concerned to share that the report notes, and I quote again, "It is very likely that the weaknesses that caused the premature access of the November 2025 Economic and Fiscal Outlook were pre-existing. Indeed, it appears that the March 2025 Economic and Fiscal Outlook was accessed prematurely." Mr. Speaker, these findings are very serious indeed. That market-sensitive information should have information should have been prematurely accessible to a small group of market participants is extremely concerning. That it might have been the case on more than one occasion is even more severe. We do not know at this stage the extent to which market behaviour may have been affected on this or other occasions as a result of information being available early. But I do want to share one further bit of information from the report with the House today. On the morning of the budget, the first IP address to successfully access the EFO had made 32 prior attempts that day, starting at around 5 a.m. Such a volume of requests implies that the person attempting to access the document had every confidence that persistence would lead to success at some point. And this unfortunately leads us to consider whether the reason they tried so persistently to access the EFO is because they had been successful at a previous fiscal event. At this time, Mr. Speaker, we do not have the answers to all these questions, but I can confirm the Treasury will be making contact with previous Chancellors to make them aware of the developments that relate to previous fiscal events. The OBR have rightly conducted their internal investigation as quickly as possible, and it is right that both the Government and the Treasury Select Committee now take time to consider the report and its findings. The Treasury Select Committee will have the opportunity to carefully question the OBR tomorrow at their post-budget hearing. Furthermore, in response to the recommendation in paragraph 3.4 of the report that the problem exposed last week was not a new one, I can confirm to the House that the Government will be working in conjunction with the National Cyber Security Centre to take forward the recommendation that a forensic examination of other fiscal events is carried out, although let me specifically note for the House that the report finds no evidence of hostile cyber activity. In addition, the report says that they could not, in the time available, carry out a deeper forensic examination of other recent economic and fiscal outlook events, and we recommend that such an exercise is, with expert support, now urgently carried out. Mr. Speaker, we will make sure that work is carried out urgently. We will look at wider questions of the systemic risk that this incident has uncovered, including the report's conclusion that the OBR's information security arrangements should have been regularly re-examined and assured by the management of the OBR. This government is committed to the independence of the OBR and its role at the heart of economic and fiscal policy making. The Chancellor and the whole of the Treasury value the independence of the OBR, and we have valued the constructive relationship we have had with them over the past 16 months in challenging economic times. The strength of that institution is a vital pillar in the government's economic and fiscal policy making, and we will respond to this matter with the seriousness it demands.
The statement on the OBR forecast, and in light of the press reports on this matter, I should remind the House that the rules and conventions relating to parliamentary language, as the scheme A sets out, unless this discussion is based upon a substantive motion, certain personal criticism, including accusation of lying or deliberately misleading, are not permitted. And I know the House will want to be at its best, and we take this very seriously. I now call the Shadow Chancellor, Mel Stride.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And can I begin, Mr. Speaker, with the matter of the OBR leak report, to say that we will, of course, study that report in detail. But can I also seek the immediate reassurance from the Right Honourable Gentleman that his concluding comment in that regard, and I quote, "We will respond to this matter with the seriousness it demands," will not include scapegoating the OBR to distract from the serious questions surrounding the handling of the budget by the Chancellor, Ministers, the Treasury and Number 10. And so, Mr. Speaker, turning to the other matters the Chief Secretary addressed in his statement, we expect those in positions of power to act with transparency, openness and integrity. But it is increasingly clear that in recent weeks the conduct of people in government fell short of those standards. This is not just my view. Indeed, a member of the Cabinet is quoted in the press today saying, and I quote, "The handling of this budget has been a disaster from start to finish." Mr. Speaker, the impression has been given that there was a concerted attempt to paint an inaccurate picture of the public finances designed to give political cover for policy decisions around increases in taxes and in welfare spending. Mr. Speaker, on the 4th of November, the Chancellor delivered a pre-budget statement in Downing Street. In it, she said that the OBR would be downgrading their productivity forecasts, meaning lower tax receipts. The Chancellor herself says that statement was meant to set the context for the public finances and the need to take difficult decisions on tax. But she failed, and this is the key point that the Right Honourable Gentleman did not address, she failed to mention that the net result of the OBR's review of the economy was in fact an increase in tax revenues, not a black hole. To quote the OBR's budget report, in isolation, the reduction in productivity growth could have lowered revenues by around 16 billion. However, the boost to receipts from higher inflation and changes to the composition of nominal GDP growth more than offset this. The Chief Secretary argues that there was a need to increase headroom, but that was not the justification for tax rises which was given before the budget, although it is effectively an admission that the decision to leave such a small headroom at the last two fiscal events was irresponsible. And it fails to acknowledge that a significant proportion of the increase in taxes was actually used to fund policy decisions on spending, specifically on welfare. Mr. Speaker, on the 14th of November, the media were briefed that income tax rates would not be increased following the improved forecast from the OBR. We now know this was simply false. As I pointed out in my letter to the OBR before the budget, the finalised pre-measures forecast came weeks before this on the 31st of October. Even after the budget, in a Guardian interview, the Chancellor said income tax rises had remained on the table well into November, quote, because we didn't know the size of the downgrade in productivity. That is not true. Since then, on Friday, the OBR took the unprecedented step of publishing their estimates for headroom in each of their pre-measures forecast rounds. As a result, we now know that at no point was there a deficit of the scale suggested to the media. So can I ask the Chief Secretary, why did the Chancellor claim that she did not know the size of the headroom forecast by the OBR in November when their final forecast was submitted on the 31st of October? At what point were the Cabinet informed that the forecast still showed a surplus? And why did the Chancellor suggest that the OBR's review of the economy had led to a significant deterioration in the public finances? We now know that the briefings to the press were not just inappropriate, they were inaccurate. Those briefings can only have come from inside government. So can the Chief Secretary finally give us a clear answer? Was the Chancellor aware of those briefings and did she authorise them, yes or no? Can he commit to a full investigation by both the Permanent Secretary and the Financial Conduct Authority into those briefings? And can he explain why the Chancellor chose to opine repeatedly on the OBR's forecasts before the budget when those forecasts are provided to her in strictest confidence? Mr. Speaker, the Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister claimed this morning that the OBR's publication on Friday was simply responding to a request from the Select Committee. But the OBR's report on Wednesday said that it planned to write this letter already. So can the Chief Secretary confirm that in fact it was a proactive choice by the OBR to publish that information, clearly suggesting that the OBR were concerned that the record as to who knew what and when would otherwise be less than clear? Mr. Speaker, it is a matter of profound regret that while the Chancellor chose to appear before the media yesterday, she did not see fit to appear here today. The Chancellor's credibility is in tatters, and to the long list of her failings in respect to these matters should be added that of disrespecting this House.
Chief Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, I was unclear from the Shadow Chancellor's comments at the beginning of his speech just then whether, like us, he values the role of the OBR in the budget-setting process. We value its independence, we value its integrity, and that is why we take what happened last Wednesday with the utmost seriousness, and we are determined to pursue it. Mr. Speaker, the Shadow Chancellor went on to make a series of other points which I will address, but what he fails to acknowledge is that the productivity downgrade was real. The £16 billion hit to the forecast as a result of productivity downgrade was real. And I wonder why he doesn't want to acknowledge that, Mr. Speaker. Could it be because the productivity downgrade was a result of things his government did over the 14 years that they were in office? Could it be the fact that the productivity downgrade was a result of a review by the OBR of policies including cuts to public investment, the mishandling of Brexit, the record of the previous government? That is perhaps, Mr. Speaker, why he doesn't want to acknowledge that point. But, Mr. Speaker, the productivity downgrade, £16 billion, was real. The need to build headroom was crucial. Those were principles that guided the Chancellor going into the budget, as well as the importance of cutting the cost of living, cutting NHS waiting lists and cutting government borrowing. And Mr. Speaker, the Shadow Chancellor will remember from when he was in government under the Conservatives that the process with the OBR and the Treasury is an iterative one that runs up until budget day. And when the Chancellor delivered her budget alongside the Economic and Fiscal Outlook, which was published, as we have discussed today, slightly early, that set out the context of the decisions that she took. He raised the question about information security, and he will have received, I'm sure, the letter from the Permanent Secretary to himself sent on November the 25th, which says that as Permanent Secretary, I, in this case the Permanent Secretary, place the utmost weight on budget security and will continue to keep all aspects under review to ensure the integrity of the budget process. And finally, Mr. Speaker, the Shadow Chancellor asked where the Chancellor is today. I'm very pleased to tell the House that the Chancellor has been at the Wales Investment Summit today, following the announcement yesterday of £1.4 billion of extra investment into Wales, just the latest in £16 billion of new investments announced since the summit was launched.
We come to the Chair of the Select Committee, Dame Meg Hillier.
Thank you.
Members have got to learn you can't run in front of other members when they're speaking. Please, it's really bad on TV and it's not courteous. Dame Meg Hillier.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I too welcome the fact that the OBR have put this report out so quickly so that it can put its house in order and make sure this must never happen again. But I have been saddened and troubled by the number of leaks, advertent and inadvertent, that have come out during the budget process. So will the Chief Secretary please assure the House that there will be proper discussion in government about how to prevent this? And I only need to point him to the words of the Permanent Secretary at the Treasury to the Treasury Select Committee on the 12th of February this year, where he was very clear that leaks can be market moving and they must not happen. And let's be clear that the DMO was still trading during the process of this budget and selling gilts at a higher price as a result.
Chief Secretary.
Well, I thank my right honourable friend for her comments. And, Mr. Speaker, I can reassure her and you and the whole House that this government takes the budget process and its responsibilities to this House very seriously. And as I mentioned earlier, the Permanent Secretary has made clear that the Treasury puts the utmost weight on budget security. And the Permanent Secretary has made clear in his letter to the Shadow Chancellor that he will continue to keep all aspects under review to ensure the integrity of the budget process.
Daisy Cooper, Liberal Democrat spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the incredibly serious issue of security failings at the OBR, I understand that the Minister says he does not have all of the answers to the questions, but can I ask whether he has either requested or received any advice on whether the attempts to access that information have reached a threshold that might be criminal under the Criminal Justice Act or might reach a civil level under market abuse regulations? Related to that, can I ask the Minister whether there are any other arm's-length bodies, either related to his department or other departments, that might also now need to conduct a similar internal review into their security? Mr. Speaker, the budget process has been a mess. There has been leaks on a level that has never been seen before, huge amounts of flip-flopping that has created uncertainty for households, for the markets, and led to investment being put on hold by businesses. During the pre-budget press conference, the Chancellor talked about a reduction of productivity growth, but failed to mention that tax receipts were higher than expected. Can the government explain why it omitted to communicate that information? Mr. Speaker, in Sweden, following its own budget crisis in the early 90s, that government changed to a system where the Swedish Parliament saw a draft budget, it debated it at length, and opposition parties could propose alternatives and amendments. Has the government given any consideration at all to introducing a better system? Mr. Speaker, on the issue of omissions, ministers will be aware that on a number of occasions over the last year, ministers have repeated the claim that they would introduce permanently lower business rates for businesses in this country, but they failed to omit that business rates bills would go up because of the higher valuations. Pubs are now saying that the average pub increase will be £12,000 a year, or 76% over the next 3 years. Why did the government omit to mention this?
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I would refer the Honourable Lady to the comments I made in my earlier speech about how we're going to take forward the recommendations in this report, because, as I made very clear, this is an incredibly serious incident. We take it incredibly seriously, and we're going to move urgently to take forward those recommendations in that report. She asks about other arm's length bodies or other government organisations, and we take security, information security, cyber security incredibly serious right across government, and that was the focus of the spending review to ensure that all departments and all bodies of government are adequately resourced to ensure they have the right information technology, the right cyber security, the right information security for the future. The Honourable Lady also referred to the Chancellor's speech on November the 4th, and what the Chancellor set out there was the challenges that we're facing and the principles that would guide her going into the budget. The principles being cutting NHS waiting lists, cutting the cost of living, and cutting government borrowing, and that is exactly what she delivered in her budget last week. And on the point of business rates, Mr. Speaker, although I suspect that's a debate for another day rather than this statement, I would point at anyone concerned about increases in their valuations towards the generous transitional relief, which will cap the increase in bills at 15% or less for most small businesses next year.
Luke Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Having spent the past 18 months arguing that this government has mismanaged the public finances, the benches opposite have now come to the House to argue that the public finances were fine after all. Their position is patently absurd due to the productivity downgrade of the OBR, which was a direct result of the benches opposite's decisions. The headroom available to the government had been cut by 57%. So does the Minister agree that the benches opposite are right to be angry about the state of the public finances, and the reason they are on those benches is because they are responsible for that state, and the Chancellor is on our benches making decisions in the national interest?
I brought you in to actually ask a short question, not for a full-blown statement. So please, don't test the chair too often too quickly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my honourable friend very much for his intervention. He's absolutely right to draw attention to the fact that the party opposite want to completely distance themselves from their record in government, and we have seen their record in government laid bare through the OBR's productivity downgrade, which hit the public finances to the tune of £16 billion as a result of the investigation by the OBR. That is a real consequence on our economy and meant we had to take real decisions to correct it.
Mr. Speaker, you described the chaos and leaks in the run-up to the budget as a hokey-cokey. And just today, the House had to be suspended because the statement arrived so late on a budget delivered so early the Chancellor hadn't actually given it. All a few hours after the Prime Minister had to do a second launch to try and explain it, a day after the Chancellor toured the studios trying to say she didn't mislead people over it. Wouldn't it have been clearer just to say he was hiking tax in order to put up welfare?
Mr. Speaker, what is clear is that we delivered a budget to cut the cost of living, cut NHS waiting lists and cut government borrowing.
Jim McMahon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Isn't it really the case that after 14 years of the party opposite telling the country that politics can't make positive change, that this government has delivered an answer on the two-child limit, answers on things like apprenticeship, and answers things like the future economy and decent public services? And that's why the response is as it seems. But listen, this has not covered the OBR in glory whatsoever. And I hear from the front bench that there is confidence in the OBR and there is a faith in the role that it has to play in the future. But surely this is the moment to say it's on its last warning.
Chief Secretary.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his question. And, you know, he's right to point out that we believe the OBR plays a critical role in the budget process. The OBR plays an important role in the robust and transparent fiscal framework that underpins our approach in government. And indeed, the first bill passed by this government included the fiscal lock, which prevents the sidelining of the OBR, which the previous government did and which caused such chaos for people across this country.
Forward.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And the leak of the Office for Budget Responsibility, Economic and Financial Forecasts on Wednesday was obviously shocking, and they have rightly come up with a very swift and complete report as to how that happened. The partial information and the leaks from the Treasury over the many months in the run-up to the budget were, in my opinion, equally shocking. And they caused real-life choices to be made in this economy, and they have dampened confidence in this economy. So will the Chief Secretary commit to an equally thorough and equally rapid leak report presented to this House?
Well, thank you. Mr. Speaker, as I said earlier in this statement, the government takes the budget process and our responsibilities to this House very seriously. And as she's also aware, the Permanent Secretary has committed to keeping all aspects under review to ensure the integrity of the budget process.
Jim Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I thank the Chief Secretary for his statement. Given that, as others have said, the economic and fiscal outlook contains highly sensitive information on which billions of pounds can be traded, and that the report, the investigation report, makes clear this was not the first time that confidential information had been released before a fiscal event. Does the Minister agree that alongside the National Cyber Security Agency that there might be a role for the National Crime Agency to look at whether something untoward has taken place?
Chief Secretary.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his question, and as I set out in my remarks earlier, we will be taking forward the recommendations of the report. In particular, we'll be working with, as he referenced, the National Cyber Security Centre to take forward the recommendation of a forensic examination of other fiscal events, because the truth is, Mr. Speaker, it has come to light because of the early publication of the EFO last week. We know through the initial analysis of the OBR that this happened in March. We don't yet know if that happened at previous fiscal events, including for previous Chancellors.
How about?
Speaker, the detail whether the Treasury was dealing with a fiscal black hole or a fiscal lack of headroom will be rather lost on most of my Bath constituents. But will he not agree that the weeks and weeks of speculation leading up to the budget were very damaging, particularly to businesses, and his department could have done more to avoid that?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I recognise that there was a lot of speculation in the media in the run-up to the budget, but from the government's point of view, the Chancellor took a decision on the 4th of November to set out what her priorities were and what the challenges were going into that budget. We set out the context around the productivity downgrade, set out the importance of building fiscal headroom, and we set out the importance of cutting NHS waiting lists, cutting the cost of living, and cutting government borrowing.
Antonio Banks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I'm sure my right honourable friend will agree with me that it is very, very worrying to hear about the repeated attempts to access the statement before it was given. And I wonder if the benches opposite might be a little more concerned, given it may have affected them. But does my right honourable friend agree that if a government left itself with only £4 billion worth of headroom, it would be taking unacceptable risks with the UK's fiscal stability?
My honourable friend is absolutely right. And imagine, Mr. Speaker, if I were in this House trying to defend a budget delivered with just a few £1 billion of headroom. What on earth message would that send about the UK economy? That headroom is there to reduce the cost of government borrowing and to give us protection against future shocks that might come our way.
John Glenn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the matter of the process failure of the premature publishing of the document, I think there will be a consensus across the House over this is damaging to the UK's reputation, the reputation of the OBR and to the Treasury. And I welcome that the report says there are issues for the Cabinet Office, the Treasury and the OBR around how documents are hosted. But on the matter of the substantive issue of what the OBR had told the Treasury, the net overall effect of what the OBR had told the Treasury, there can be no doubt. There may be a dispute over whether 4.2 billion was sufficient or not, but we do know for one thing for certain, that they did not say there was a significant black hole that required 2p increase in income tax, which was the consequence of the Chancellor's press conference. Does the Chief Secretary not agree that the material distinction between those two issues mustn't be lost? And he must also face up to the reality of the overall net effect and what impression that left.
Chief Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, the Right Honourable Gentleman is a former Treasury Minister himself, and so he will know the importance of the OBR's productivity downgrade and the impact that that has had on the forecasts going into the future. He will know that £16 billion is a significant downgrade to have as a result of that productivity review, and he will know, Mr. Speaker, that were I here defending a budget with just a few £1 billion of headroom, that would not be a position any of us would want to be in.
Gardner.
The Chief Secretary quoted the OBR review, which said the ultimate responsibility for the circumstances in which this vulnerability occurred was with the leadership of the OBR. Has anyone in the OBR leadership offered their resignation, or has that gone out of fashion?
Chief Secretary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, that would be a matter for the leadership of the OBR, but let me emphasise how important the OBR is as an institution for this government in providing a robust and transparent fiscal framework that underpins the stability that we have returned to the economy.
Mr. Speaker, 2 weeks ago from that dispatch box, the Minister said with a straight face to myself that he would not take lessons on credibility. I understand the error of my ways now. I should have given those lessons to the Chancellor, because since then we have seen that she has not been entirely truthful with the public. Indeed, as one of my constituents said to me travelling down from Aberdeen today, that she'd lied to the public. But while she was doing that, they're fearing for their jobs through their punitive EPL. Indeed, 100 more jobs are being lost at Harbour Energy as a result of his policies. Why is it okay for them to lose their jobs, yet she keeps hers?
I think he means the Chancellor. Please.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Gentleman was talking about the energy profits levy, and let me be clear that we know that oil and gas has a role to play in our energy mix for many years to come. We want to support that industry whilst we also make the transition to clean power, and that's the role that the energy profits levy will play. And we have set out at the budget how the energy profits levy will come to an end in 2030 or sooner if the price floor is triggered.
Holly Billington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My right honourable friend will acknowledge, as he already has done, the importance of stability for families and businesses across this country, and how, therefore, what we've been calling the fiscal headroom, but frankly is money for a rainy day, is fundamental to being able to maintain that stability, something that was a failure of the government opposite for some time. So would he also acknowledge the importance of the way that the bond markets responded positively to that budget for exactly the reason that we know that delivers us the stability that we all need?
Chief Secretary.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for her question, and whilst the government doesn't comment on movements in the bond market, it was very important to us to create that extra headroom in order to bring down the cost of government borrowing and to make sure that we have that buffer for the future.
Sir Ian Duncan-Smith.
Mr. Speaker, I've been here a few years and I've seen the run to different budgets. But I have to say, in line with the Chairman of the Treasury Select Committee, this has been utterly chaotic and appallingly dangerous. The reality here is that the Right Honourable Gentleman said that there was plenty of speculation in the media. It wasn't speculation, it was informed statements by the media of what they had been briefed from the government. knowing full well now the damage that has done to our reputation and also the unprecedented requirement of the OBR then to publish its advice to the government demonstrates the damage they have done. Will the right honourable gentleman come to the dispatch box in all decency and say the government apologises for the mess that they have made?
Mr. Speaker, I will come to the dispatch box and say that this government takes the budget process and its responsibilities to this House incredibly seriously, and as the Permanent Secretary has set out, he places the utmost weight on budget security. And as I have said to several of the right honourable members, honourable friends, the Permanent Secretary will continue to keep all aspects under review to ensure the integrity of the budget process.
Law.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does my right honourable friend agree with me that some of the real world and market impacts that we saw last week underscore the importance of following proper process with the OBR, and that we saw the evidence of the contrary of that just 3 years ago when the government chose to ignore and bypass it entirely, causing interest rates and mortgage costs to soar?
Chief Secretary.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for drawing a comparison between the way in which we as a government interact with the OBR and the way that the Liz Truss government interacted with the OBR, because we value the independence of the OBR and we value the constructive relationship that we've had with the OBR over the past 16 months. In stark contrast, the previous government sidelined the OBR and caused economic chaos for families across the country.
Sir Julie Lewis.
The government won't apologise for this sorry and tangled affair, but will it at least learn a couple of lessons, such as the fact that there have always been very good reasons for observing total secrecy until budget day, and secondly, when you're not in a financial black hole, don't start digging yourself into one.
Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, as the budget documents and as the EFO makes clear, the downgrade in productivity was real. That was a £16 billion hit to economic forecasts. That was a challenge which we inherited as a result of what his government did when they were in power, and we took the right and necessary decisions to fix the public finances and to make sure we could do so without going down the route of uncontrolled borrowing like his government did, or down the route of slashing public investment.
Paul Wall.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You were rightly furious last week when this OBR report was prematurely leaked to the public and also to the markets. But it's clear from this report, this independent report, this was an accident waiting to happen due to pre-existing cybersecurity failures. Pre-existing failures that we may well have laid open previous budgets to this kind of access, which should concern the party opposite as much as any other party. This is about the integrity of the OBR. Now, the non-executive director of the OBR, Baroness Hogg, who's totally independent, and Dame Susan Rice, both conclude ultimate responsibility rests with the leadership of the OBR. I wouldn't expect the Chief Secretary to say whether he's got confidence in the chair of the OBR, but isn't it clear that those non-executive directors clearly lack that confidence in the chair of the OBR?
Chief Secretary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it's clear that this is a very serious matter, and it's right that the government responds to it with the seriousness that it demands, because as my honourable friend made clear, this is not, and I quote the OBR again, simply a matter of pressing the wrong button on a locally managed website too early. This is a systemic issue and a far more serious one that deserves our serious attention.
Clive Jones.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Under the last Conservative government, we saw years of chaos, incompetence, mismanagement, and very often a lack of transparency and honesty with the British public. The government promised change and had a responsibility to deliver a clean break with the Conservatives' approach to government. Will the Minister acknowledge the damage that's been done to those efforts? And what steps will the government take to rectify it?
Mr. Speaker, I would say to the honourable gentleman that one of the reasons why we take this matter so seriously is precisely because of the value that we place on the OBR. We see the OBR as having a vital role in a robust and transparent fiscal framework, and that is why we take this breach of information last week so very seriously.
Jenko.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's really concerning that these leaks had happened before. Could the OBR tell, the investigation I understand is still underway, who was trying to access it, and can my right honourable friend confirm that this will be investigated fully? Can my right honourable friend also confirm when there was last headroom as low as £4 billion?
Chief Secretary.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for her question, and she asks the question around what the OBR report was able to conclude. And indeed, in the report, they said that in the time available, they were not able to carry out a deeper forensic examination of other recent economic and fiscal outlook events. They recommended that such an exercise is urgently carried out with expert support, and that is exactly what the government will be doing.
Simon Hoare.
Mr. Speaker, events such as these do allow ministers and the wider government to reflect on current circumstances. I think that should be recognised. I'm not seeking to scapegoat the OBR, but they're not the Messiah. Sometimes they can be a very naughty boy. They do have to revise their predictions at all times. Now, it may be too traditional to suggest to this government that the Treasury should actually be the Office of Budget Responsibility, and there are good brains in the bank that can be tapped into. Is now not a good opportunity to actually reflect what advice government needs, whether the OBR is fit for purpose, and whether it should be disbanded?
Well, I have a great deal of personal respect for the right honourable gentleman, but I have to say I take a different view than he implies he takes in respect to the OBR, because we value the role of the OBR. We value the role of the OBR in a robust and transparent fiscal framework, and it is precisely because we value that role that we take this breach of information last week so seriously.
Rachel Musk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To bring this ensuing debate to a conclusion of who knew what when, does my right honourable friend agree that he should publish a detailed timetable of the economic information that the Chancellor was in receipt of, including the return on tax receipts and the impact on wage growth?
Well, Mr. Speaker, as my honourable friend will know, the OBR has already published its forecast at various rounds during the budget process. The process is iterative between the Treasury and the Office of Budget Responsibility, and at the budget, I'm sure my honourable friend will welcome the fact that we cut the cost of living, cut NHS waiting lists and cut government borrowing.
Samuel Wilson.
Mr. Speaker, the government's had a lucky break today in that the OBR's confession and report on its leak of the budget details has coincided with this meeting today. It's given the Minister the opportunity to deflect and use a shield, the shield of the OBR, to deflect from the real criticism which should lie with the Chancellor, who weeks before was using selective information, distorting the forecasts to cover up for the fact that she was taking money from those who work to pay those who don't work. And is that not the real shame of what we're discussing today?
Chief Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, the real focus of the Chancellor has been on cutting the cost of living, cutting NHS waiting lists and cutting government borrowing. And I hope that the honourable gentleman would, like all members of this House, value the importance of the Office of Budget Responsibility and take this matter with the same seriousness that we in government do.
David Pinto-Tuchinski.
Mr. Speaker, I, like many members of this House, have been shocked by the early release of the OBR's EFO report. This kind of error risks compromising the integrity of the budget process and moving markets. That evidence has now emerged that this was not the first time that the OBR forecast was accessed prematurely due to systematic failures in the OBR's own cybersecurity is simply unforgivable. Given this appalling failure that the chair of the OBR himself acknowledges is the worst failure in the organisation's history, can the Minister tell this House what he thinks it would take for the chair of the OBR to resign?
Chief Secretary.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his question. And obviously, the questions about what the leadership of the OBR do are for the leadership of the OBR. But I can tell him that this government takes the information breach last week incredibly seriously. And the fact that it wasn't simply a wrong button being pressed on a locally managed website, the fact that it was a systemic issue, the fact that it had happened before, at least one time in March of this year, and who knows whether it had happened at previous events, underscores just how serious a matter and just what a failing it represents.
Sir Gavin Williamson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We know the Chief Secretary is a very thoughtful, intelligent man, and he will know that the press were being briefed extensively about what the budget was going to say. They weren't making it up. Where does the Chief Secretary believe that briefing was coming from? Does he believe it was coming from special advisers? Does he believe it was coming from Treasury officials? Does he believe it was coming from Number 10? Or does he think the Christmas elf had taken a hand in all of this?
Chief Secretary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I know that journalists from all publications need no encouragement to speculate on the contents of the budget. And I would draw his attention to my previous remarks that this government takes the budget process and our responsibility to this House very seriously.
Serena Bratton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I, like other members across this House, I hope, are deeply concerned and shocked that the OBR have leaked not just the autumn budget, but also previous fiscal events. Hugely concerning. Does my right honourable friend agree that the Chancellor's decision to more than double fiscal headroom has been welcomed by markets and will strengthen UK resilience?
Chief Secretary.
Well, my honourable friend is absolutely right to draw attention to the fact that not only doubling the headroom, but getting it to £21.7 billion is a crucial step in strengthening the resilience of the UK economy and the public finances, helping to bring down government borrowing and protect us from future shocks.
Richard Tice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm concerned that the Minister today in this House has misled inadvertently the House on 3 separate occasions, as the Prime Minister inadvertently misled the British people this morning. Cutting borrowing is simply not the case. The OBR's numbers show clearly that over the next 5 years, government borrowings increased by a net £504 billion, an additional £60 billion from the OBR forecast back in March. He can't even claim that it's as a percentage of net debt, because all of those numbers are increasing. So will the Minister please correct the record?
Chief Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, borrowing falls in every year of this forecast. Thank you.
Chris Vins.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sorry, I was shocked to be picked so early, but I appreciate it. Thank you. I thank my right honourable friend for his statement. The OBR report being published prematurely is very disappointing. And I think, to be fair, members across the House can agree from that. Why it's particularly disappointing for me and for residents in Harlow is actually it detracts from a budget that makes a real difference to families in my constituency. Freezing rail fares, freezing prescription charges, lowering waiting times for the NHS, and, as you know, I'm particularly concerned about actually tackling tax evasion.
Chief Secretary.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his question, and not only is he an excellent advocate for tackling tax avoidance and evasion, but he's also absolutely right to point to the fact that what is important for people across this country is that this budget cuts the cost of living, cuts NHS waiting lists, and cuts government borrowing.
Any more?
It's deeply damaging and, dare I say, unprecedented that we find ourselves here today listening to this statement about OBR forecasts midway through the debate on the budget. It raises more questions, not least that the Chancellor chose not to be here today to answer those questions. Why?
I don't know, Mr. Speaker, if the right honourable lady missed my explanation earlier of where the Chancellor was, but I'm pleased to announce to the House that the Chancellor is in Wales today at the Wales Investment Summit. And she is there following an announcement yesterday of £1.4 billion of extra investment into Wales. And that is just the latest of £16 billion of new investment announced since the summit was launched.
Anderson.
Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Chief Secretary for his statement. The integrity of fiscal forecasting not only depends on the technical expertise, but on the public confidence in those people who are delivering them. And clearly that confidence has been shaken in the past few days. So can the Chief Secretary outline what governance changes he and the Department are thinking to enact so that those overseeing the fiscal process meet the highest standards of conduct and scrutiny? And does he have confidence in the head of the OBR in delivering them?
Chief Secretary.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his question, and I would emphasise to him and to all members of this House that the Chancellor and all of us in the Treasury value the independence of the OBR, and we value the constructive relationship we've had with them over the past 16 months in challenging times. Obviously, the matter which we're discussing today, the early publication of that report last Wednesday, is an incredibly serious matter. And the reason why we as a government are taking it so seriously is because we want to preserve the integrity and independence of the OBR in the future.
Liz Savile-Roberts.
I'm very interested to learn that the Chancellor is in Wales today. Amidst all this message manipulation, she leaves him to explain exactly why the continued freeze on income tax thresholds will hit Wales badly, with an estimated 5 times more Welsh workers pulled into the basic rate compared with the UK as a whole. And I can only presume the Treasury consulted with Labour Welsh Government. Will he release their response specifically in relation to confidence and cost of living hit?
Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm sorry the Right Honourable Lady does not welcome the fact that the Chancellor is in Wales today promoting investment in Wales, but I can point her to the fact that the decision to lift the 2-child benefit cap will benefit children in Wales, that the money off energy bills will benefit people in Wales, changes to the fiscal framework will benefit people in Wales, that the decisions we took in this government cut the cost of living and make sure we cut government borrowing, which will benefit people right across the UK.
Lawrence Turner.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The OBR is a valuable institution, and the Economic and Fiscal Outlook is by far the most important document that it produces. Today's report makes it clear that the OBR's IT infrastructure was a point of critical failure that should have been identified as far back as 2013.
Absolutely.
Does he agree that the chair of the OBR now cannot credibly lead the investigatory and reconstruction work, and that he should resign?
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, I understand events are moving quickly, and I understand from messages passed to me there has been an event, the chair of the OBR has resigned, is what I understand from messages passed to me.
Dr. Luke Evans.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And through the morass of the leaks, one thing is crystal clear. This Labour government broke its manifesto commitment. The Chancellor said, I am asking everyone to make a contribution, then went round the studios on the weekend asking ordinary people to pay a little bit more. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, she is not asking, she is telling the public. So will the Minister come to the dispatch box, and if my constituents say they are not paying those taxes, they will not face any criminal or financial repercussions?
Madam Deputy Speaker, the Chancellor was clear that in taking the decisions that we took at the budget last week when it comes to taxation, we were taking the fair and necessary decisions to make sure everyone makes a contribution, but that the contribution of working people is kept as low as possible thanks to the other choices we have made, increasing tax on property income, increasing tax on properties worth more than £2 million, reforming gambling taxation. All of that means that we can keep taxes on working people as low as possible.
Andrew Pates.
Madam Deputy Speaker, the leak of the OBR report makes deeply worrying reading, so I welcome the resignation of the chair of the OBR because leadership matters on these issues. It turns out that the leak was not as unprecedented as we thought last week, as we've seen they have leaked earlier documents and they may need to go back further in their look at it. This could have led to speculation and costs running into millions for us. Can my right honourable friend tell us if he knows how many times this has happened before? Does he know when we will know that information, if not? And more importantly, in regards to last week, does he know how many times the OBR's budget report was viewed externally before the Chancellor delivered the budget last week?
Minister.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his question, and he's right to draw attention to the seriousness of what happened last week. The initial report by the OBR sets out just how many times it was accessed and shared before the Chancellor had given her budget speech. It was, there were 32 attempts to access it, starting around 5 a.m. That day. It was then shared multiple times before the Chancellor had delivered her budget speech. We don't have all of the answers to the questions that he asked, and the OBR acknowledged that in the limited time they had available, they've not done the forensic analysis of what happened at all previous fiscal events. We know that it was certainly accessed in the March 25 spring statement EFO, but what we will do as a government is work to make sure we have full information and urgently find out what was shared, or what was inadvertently shared rather, at previous fiscal events.
Dr. Ellie Chowns.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. We've had plenty of disagreement today, but I think it's clear there is also consensus that truth and accountability matter. And so I would like to draw the House's attention to the campaign by Compassion in Politics for a targeted legal measure that would make it an offence for any politician or candidate to deliberately mislead the public on a matter of verifiable fact. This is now being taken forward in Wales. It has long-standing cross-party support in this House. Will the government support those of us who are campaigning for a political truthfulness bill in order to rebuild trust in politics?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this government takes the role of the independent advisor on standards incredibly seriously and abides by his rulings. We know what damage the previous government did to trust in politics, and whilst it would be foolish to suggest that no government at any point in the future will ever face difficulties, it is how you respond to those difficulties which matters. And this government has shown that we respond in a way that is transparent, fair, and brings an end to any sense that people have behaved improperly.
Peter Swallow.
Madam Deputy Speaker. On the 3rd of September, the Shadow Chancellor stood at that dispatch box and claimed that the hole in the public finances could be as much as £40 billion. Now, as it happens, that was not the case, not least because of the Chancellor's steadfast commitment to stabilising our economy. But does my right honourable friend not agree? It's a bit rich for the party opposite to go around claiming that people are talking down the economy and talking up the gap in our public finances, when the only people doing that are them.
Minister.
Well, my honourable friend is right, and I don't hold out any hope that the party opposite will speak with any consistency or that they will do anything other than try and talk down the British economy. And in stark contrast, we are cutting government borrowing, we are increasing the headroom, we are making sure we have stable public finances and stable economy, because it's on that basis we can boost investment and growth.
Sir John Hayes.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The demeanour of the Chancellor should be somewhere between an undertaker and an oncologist. A reassuring presence and no words wasted. Not a party entertainer trying a few tricks before they go on stage, which is what this Chancellor did before the budget. So in seizing back control from the OBR, unaccountable, unelected, and should have never been set up in the first place, will the Minister recognise that unless the Treasury and ministers are straight with the public, no one will be trusted?
Look, I think the right honourable gentleman and I disagree clearly about the role of the OBR, because we value its role in a transparent and robust fiscal framework. And may I say, Madam Deputy Speaker, because during this debate Richard Hughes has offered his resignation, and may I put on record on behalf of the government our thanks to Richard Hughes for his dedication to public service.
Glyn.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It strikes me that much of the criticism from budget opposites is rooted in the decision to increase funds to raise the headroom. Now, I know that forecasts are the job for the OBR, but given that they're busy at the moment, I wonder if the honourable gentleman could advise me what the likely impact on the markets of having a headroom of just £4 billion would have been.
Well, my honourable friend is absolutely right to draw attention to the fact that had I been here today defending a headroom of £4 billion or less, it would be a completely impossible task. And this government is determined to ensure that we increase headroom to give us greater stability. And by increasing it to £21.7 billion, we have done just that.
Terrible.
Really takes the integrity of the budget as seriously as the Chief Secretary says, then she would not have leaked so much to the media before. There's speculation and then there's being spoon-fed. And the only principles actually guiding the Chancellor was keeping her backbenchers happy, and the only cuts were to confidence. So, can the Chief Secretary set out exactly what steps will the Chancellor take to clear up this mess? Will she come back before this House, and will she refer herself to the FCA?
Minister.
I don't quite understand the honourable lady's question, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Chancellor, when we got into office in July last year, our task was to fix the mess that they had left of the public finances. And at this budget, the OBR's productivity downgrade revealed a further damage, deep scars that her government's actions had caused on our economy as a result of the slashing of public investment and the mishandling of Brexit. So if anyone wants to come to this chamber and apologise, might it be her?
Steve Race, are you ready this time?
I'm ready, Madam Deputy Speaker. Thank you very much. Can I first express my concern about the outcomes of the budget, the leak report, which are completely unacceptable and apparently, especially because they're apparently so systemic. Now, the OBR productivity downgrade reduced revenues by 16 billion. Why does my right honourable friend think productivity growth has, since 2010, so consistently underperformed forecasts, and indeed other countries too?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for this question about the OBR productivity downgrade, which clearly has played a really important and difficult role in this budget process. And what the OBR's review of productivity made clear is that under the previous government, the decision to cut public services, to cut public investment, the mishandling of Brexit has had deep scars on our economy. And those are deep scars that we had to take decisions at this budget to correct.
Madam Deputy Speaker, at last year's autumn budget, the Chancellor claimed that 75% of farms will be unaffected by the APR and BPR, a figure that has been widely disputed. This year, there's yet more confusion over the figures, with the Chancellor implying public finances were significantly worse than the OBR assessment suggested. So after years of being ignored and taken for granted by the Conservatives, how can rural businesses have confidence in this government's economic strategy of key figures that are inaccurate or misrepresented?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I've taken part in a number of debates in this House and in Westminster Hall to debate the changes to agricultural property relief and business property relief that the government introduced at the budget last year. We've debated the figures extensively. Some of the difference in people's figures stems from the fact that we are talking about estates, which is the right measure when you're talking about inheritance tax rather than the values of farms themselves. But I also hope that the Honourable Lady would have seen the change that we made to the system at this budget through the spousal transfer.
Mike Wood.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As the Chief Secretary will know, the Ministerial Code requires ministers to be as open as possible with Parliament and the public. So exactly when did the Chief Secretary learn that the Chancellor did not face the shortfall that the Treasury was briefing to the press?
Well, Mr. Speaker, as a Treasury Minister, I've obviously been involved in discussions with the Chancellor and with the Prime Minister's team throughout the budget process, because we developed these policies collectively to cut the cost of living, cut NHS waiting lists and cut government borrowing.
Graham Ledbetter.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Prime Minister said this morning that politics is about choices. The Chancellor chose not to disclose the improved tax outlook from the OBR when she addressed the country on the 4th of November. The Chancellor chose to overstate the challenges with public finances. The Chancellor chose to withhold more positive forecasts from her Cabinet colleagues. The Chancellor chose not to be here today to answer questions on her conduct in office. Does the Minister agree that her position is untenable and that she should now choose to resign?
Madam Deputy Speaker, the Chancellor chose on November the 4th to be upfront with people about the challenges we face. And at the budget, she chose to cut the cost of living, cut the NHS waiting list and cut government borrowing.
Dr. Kira Mullen.
Start in saying one of the few people in the chamber who apparently isn't shocked at what's been going on this week. What I'm not shocked about is that a Labour Cabinet member, and I quote, has said that the handling of this budget has been a disaster from start to finish. Can the Chief Secretary tell us which Labour Cabinet member said this, and can they have a bigger role in the next budget?
Can the honourable gentleman tell us why he backed Liz Truss for leader?
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Chancellor announced that her plans aims to find public services, avoid austerity, invest for the future, portraying a positive future, but also spending that seems manageable, whilst the OBR forecasted if borrowing increases in the short term, this could have a potential impact on future spending in terms of welfare and debt interest, which could erode the economy. What steps will the Treasury take after budget plans to ensure that through her plans we are not sacrificing long-term stability? Thank you.
Minister.
Well, I thank the honourable gentleman for his question, and long-term stability is at the heart of the fiscal rules which the Chancellor introduced at the budget last year, which have been met at the spring statement earlier this year and have been met again at the budget last week. And as many honourable members have raised today, the fact that we are meeting those fiscal rules with a far greater headroom of £21.7 billion in the current budget balance gives us that greater stability, helps bring down the cost of government borrowing and protects us from future shocks.
John Lamont.
very much. Andy Haldane, former Bank of England chief economist, said the government's repeated mistakes and misinformation about the public finances have sucked all the life or energy from the economy. Chief Secretary, the former chief economist is correct, isn't he?
Yeah. Yes.
Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, as we set out at the budget, not only were we setting out to cut the cost of living, cut NHS waiting lists and cut government borrowing, but we were also focusing on growth through the public investment which we set out, the public investment in transport, in energy, in roads, in railways, in all the infrastructure that businesses need to do their investment to boost jobs and growth across the country. We invested in every part of the country with a focus on Wilfer in Wales, Grangemouth in Scotland, the Oxford-Cambridge corridor, the Northern Growth Corridor, because we know that growth has to happen right across the country to benefit people in every part of the UK.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, there's been too much obfuscation today between what the Office of Budget Responsibility did in leaking it early and that the Office of Budget Responsibility told the Chancellor before she made her statements about there not being the fiscal black hole that she went out to make. Madam Deputy Speaker, they were leaks to the press. Mr. Speaker stood in that chair and admonished the government for leaking. It was not speculation in the press. This has been nothing but jackanori. So how does this government start to rebuild trust with the public when it simply is trying to do smoke and mirrors and not face up to the fact that they kept leaking to the press?
Minister.
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, I don't know if the honourable gentleman heard what I said earlier when I underscored how importantly ministers in this government take the budget process and how important we take our responsibility to this House. And I referred earlier to the words of the Permanent Secretary of the Treasury about the fact that he will continue to keep all aspects of budget security under review to ensure the integrity of the budget process.
Cross.
Speaker, the forecasts are meant to be to help the government decide what to do. But there is nothing in this forecast of oil and gas revenues which explains why the EPL was kept. £6.2 billion downgrade in the expected revenue from oil and gas to the end of the budget period. A 40% decrease in just a year in what it was bringing in. Production down 55% and 33% for gas and oil over the budget period. None of this is to do with the size of the basin. It's all to do with the fiscal and regulatory regime that this government is imposing on the North Sea. 100 jobs gone today in Harbour Energy. There'll be more to come, and every job loss from now is on the back of this government because they've known exactly what the oil and gas sector have been saying to them, because they've been saying exactly the same to me too, but I have chose to listen. Why has the government, on the back of the OBR forecast, decided to keep the EPL when they know the impact it's having on jobs and investment and production and the future of the North Sea?
Well, I can reassure the honourable lady that over the last year since we won the election, I've spent many hours with the oil and gas industry in Aberdeen, and that is exactly why we confirmed in the budget last week that we will end the energy profits levy in 2030 or sooner if the price floor is triggered.
Lincoln Job.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. When did the Prime Minister first brief her Cabinet colleagues on the realities of the OBR forecast?
I think the honourable gentleman means Chancellor. Yes, the Chancellor obviously spoke to Cabinet on the day of the budget, as is normal process, to let people know what is coming in the budget later that day.
Stevenson.
Madam Deputy Speaker, the Chief Secretary has failed to answer a critical question raised by my right honourable friend, the Shadow Chancellor, and a similar question was raised by the honourable member for St Albans. So I can ask the question in a slightly different way. Does the Minister agree that the FCA must urgently investigate where the conduct has fallen short, particularly Part 7 of the Financial Services Act 2012 and Article 12(1)(c) of the UK Market Abuse Regulation, and that no stone should be left unturned in that investigation?
Madam Deputy Speaker, as the Chancellor has made clear, she has now delivered her budget. The Office of Budget Responsibility have published their figures, and we have been clear that we were focused on cutting the cost of living, cutting NHS wait lists and cutting government borrowing.
Madam Deputy Speaker, it's been dragged out of the government that there was no black hole of £20 to £30 billion in the run-up to the budget. In fact, there was a surplus. So that means Treasury insiders were deliberately misleading the press, the markets, and our constituents in the run-up to the budget, where they intended all along to raise taxes on working people to fund increased welfare. Why is the Minister continuing to take the public, our constituents, for fools?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I can't work out if the honourable gentleman is implying that he thinks a few £billion of headroom is acceptable, because certainly as a government, we do not think it is. We think that having £4.2 billion or less headroom is not an acceptable place for our economy to be. And when we had the result of the OBR productivity downgrade, which had hit revenues by £16 billion, that is why decisions were necessary to restore the public finances and to meet our priorities going into the budget.
Dr Neil Shastrihurst.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. The British public are by nature a forgiving people. However, does the Chief Secretary to the Treasury not recognise that the obfuscation of the kind that we've seen over the weekend deeply damages public confidence?
Yes. Madam Deputy Speaker, I hate to break it to the honourable gentleman, but I doubt the British people will forgive them for Liz Truss's record in office.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. According to the latest House of Commons Library briefing and economic forecasts, the freeze on the income tax threshold is projected to raise over £38 billion per year by 2029-30. For comparison, the Institute for Fiscal Studies estimates that by 2030 the freeze will raise approximately £8 billion annually, which is similar to adding 1 pence to the basic rate of income tax. Will the Minister agree that the Chancellor's statement that she met the manifesto pledge not to raise income taxes, she did not meet and she misled the public and this House?
No. The Chancellor...
Order. I believe that the honourable member inadvertently used the word that the Chancellor misled the House without saying she inadvertently misled the House. Noted, but we need to be mindful of our language at all times. Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, at the budget, the decisions the Chancellor took on tax were fair and necessary. Yes, asking everyone to make a contribution, but also taking decisions around increasing property income taxation, about asking people with £2 million plus properties to contribute more, about changing the way that gambling companies are taxed. All of those decisions meant that we were able to keep the tax burden on working people as low as possible.
That is the end of the statement. I will give the front benches a moment to shuffle over.